Hello all, Rick here. Since the Borg's first introduction, retroactive lore and additions have fleshed out the Federation's history with them. The El-Aurien displacement, Enterprise's regeneration, and so on. This has raised an interesting question. Just how long has Starfleet known of the Borg threat? Let's take a look. So, of course, the earliest encounter with the Borg that we know of is one caused by time travel. The Borg of the year 2373 dispatched a cube towards Earth, with the plan of eliminating the Federation having finally reached the conclusion that the UFP was too much hassle to deal with, and that the Borg would settle for assimilating the pre-warp Earth, just to change history and get them out of the picture. As a result, the Borg attacked the site of the NX Phoenix launch site in Bozeman, Montana in an attempt to prevent first contact. This was foiled by the Enterprise E and crew, but the incident was witnessed by Lily Sloan and explained at length to Cochrane himself. The offending Borg sphere was also destroyed, and debris scattered across the system, including some chunks that fell to Earth's atmosphere and survived re-entry, landing in the Arctic polar region. While a major violation of the Temporal Prime Directive, there was too much at stake to obfuscate the truth. For his own sake and the sake of maintaining the integrity of events, Cochrane would also never speak of the unfolding incident, with only one slip-up when he revealed the truth as he experienced it a year later at a commencement address at Princeton University. No one believed him, so he'd continue to remain silent on the event for the rest of his life. However, on March the 1st, 2153, the wreckage of the Borg sphere was uncovered in the Arctic by members of the Earth Sciences Institute. The ESI was a United Earth program that continued to explore and look for scientific advancement on Earth itself, with numerous branches including archaeology, geography, biology and medicine. They were a part of the Science Council, which was basically the United Earth's umbrella organisation for scientific advancement and separate from Starfleet. It was Excavation Team A6 that was appointed to the Arctic. Among much of the wreck, the researchers uncovered several preserved Borg drones and began to analyse their findings. Amid the research, they discovered the regenerative abilities of Borg nanoprobes and the extensive levels of medical and technological development at play. Amazed by their discoveries, the team documented it all. However, the drones are not beyond death and began to regenerate, eventually reanimating and assimilating the survey outpost. It took 3 days before Starfleet would receive word of the loss of contact, and over those few days, the drones had recovered the Borg wreckage and adapted the A6 team's transport for off-world travel before departing. However, the data they had gathered was still present and sent to the NX-01 Enterprise, who were to intercept the transport. Upon encountering the vessel, the crew learned the extent of the modifications the Borg can make to technology and other lifeforms, initially attempting to save the assimilated victims of a Tarkalian freighter. Archer, himself an avid reader of Cochrane's works and tangential part in the early warp programs, links these creatures to Cochrane's speech at Princeton, but has no proof. Meanwhile, Dr. Phlox is injected with nanoprobes and begins to experience the effects of assimilation, while the Tarkalian drones begin to sabotage the Enterprise's warp field. They're vented into space, but not before Malcolm Reed witnesses their ability to adapt to energy weapons fire with personal shields. On top of this, Charles Tucker manages to get a thorough scan of the heavily modified transport ship, but can only identify some of the systems, so complex is the technology he's witnessing. They are, however, able to devise a way to pierce Borg shielding, but already understand that the Borg can adapt quickly. The vessel, and all drones on it, is eventually destroyed and no debris is recovered at this time. Phlox also finds that Omicron radiation can disrupt the nanoprobes, but only early on in the assimilation process, and prepares a neurotoxin in case he fails. Fortunately, he is successful, although the experience nearly kills him, but he recounts that he believes the drones were a part of a group consciousness, and that these cyborgs had been attempting to transmit the location of Earth out into the deep Delta Quadrant. These events were classified by Starfleet, with the data gathered by the Enterprise taken to be studied over time. When I say classified, I don't mean completely erased for no reason, but restricted. At this stage, Starfleet knows that the Borg overtake others at a rapid pace, adapt to weapons, and can advance captured technology to well beyond current Starfleet ability. They know they are hostile, and if Archer filed Phlox's experiences, then possibly that they are a hive-minded species. They also know that the Borg were attempting to signal something else in the distant Delta Quadrant, but that would take around 200 years for a signal to reach its destination. In 2293, the El-Aurien refugees that were trapped in the Nexus were encountered, seeking a new home after fleeing the Borg. The location of El-Auria appears to be in the shallow Delta Quadrant somewhere. However, for whatever reason, the El-Auriens appear to not be willing to talk about the loss of their world in 2265, or the threat of the Borg. Or if they did, then the Federation did not connect the dots, considering even Guinan, on recognising a Borg cube years later, did not actually know a ton about them, only the threat they posed. Additionally, for her, it had been at least 100 years since they were last seen, and she'd already been fleeing for 30 years by the time of the Enterprise B finding her. So, if Starfleet did learn of the Borg from the El-Auriens, then they would have had only rumour and retellings to go on. It's quite probable that without proof, these events were never connected to the incident 140 years earlier. At the very least, rumours of these cyborg aliens would have been spreading across the galaxy. Now I'm going to bring up the Romulans, because looking at maps and regarding what we learn in canon, the Romulans have been dealing with the Borg for as long as the Federation, and their territory is pretty much right over the Borg's initial incursion points. While Starfleet might have been collating rumours of Borg sightings from far-flung alien encounters, the Romulans were probably doing the same thing, maybe a year or two ahead of Starfleet. While it's not clear if they had direct encounters before the Federation did, the Star Empire certainly would put a lid on such an event. And they certainly had encounters directly around the same time as Starfleet was dealing with them. Plus we know that by the 2340s, rumours concerning the Borg were increasing, leading to the Federation encounter, and these rumours had to originate from somewhere. The Hansons were some of the first Federation citizens that took on the task of investigating the Borg for real. The USS Raven, a relatively advanced, long-range survey ship, was dispatched by a civilian science agency in 2347. Despite the starship being a USS vessel, the NAR registry reveals that it was not a part of Starfleet, but likely on loan to them for their field research. This did open it up as being able to travel into certain areas closer to the neutral zone without as many Romulan disruptors being pointed at it, though the way that the Hansons approached their research was rather haphazard, with them not even filing a flight plan on their departure of Drexler Outpost, which only registered their initial course heading towards the Beta Quadrant near the Romulan border. They were even ordered to return to Federation space, which they ignored and crossed over into the neutral zone. After 8 months chasing faint sensor readings, they eventually located a Borg cube in the unexplored Beta Quadrant. This cube eventually made its way to a transwarp aperture and crossed through, with the Raven following in their wake, bringing them into the Delta Quadrant. During the next 3 years, the Raven shadowed and even boarded a Borg cube, remaining hidden from their sensors with multi-adaptive shielding. While collecting a lot of intelligence, by 2350, the Raven would never return to share its findings. Well, I guess it did share, just with the Borg, when they assimilated them, rendering their entire excursion pointless, although it did place 7 of 9 among the collective for Voyager to later liberate. In 2364, Starfleet begins to investigate some of its colonies disappearing along the Romulan border. assuming Star Empire foul play. However, as investigations continue, it's revealed that the Romulans too are looking into their own missing colonies along the Federation border, and in time the Borg are revealed as the true culprits, their expansion finally bringing them from the fringes of the Beta Quadrant and into direct contact with Federation territory. Of course, this brings us to official first contact a year later in 2365, when Q throws the Enterprise D in the path of a Borg cube to illustrate that the Federation is not ready to deal with the darkest aspects of the galaxy, giving Starfleet a kick in the rear and letting them prepare. After the filing of the Enterprise D's interaction, the Borg existence becomes dispersed among the Starfleet. However, it seems that this knowledge is still selectively applied, with outer colonies and some vessels reporting sightings of cubed-shaped ships, instead of referring to them as the Borg. This did not last either, as the Battle of Wolf 359 truly spread knowledge of the Borg among all the Federation, as until now no force could take on over 40 Starfleet ships with a single vessel. Or maybe something like the Whale Probe, but then again, that also kind of made the news. By the end of that year, the Borg were a widely spoken of threat across most of the Alpha Quadrant. So, looking at how all this plays out, the biggest takeaway seems to be the Hansen's civilian project to look into the Borg. They were given a USS Registry starship for this task despite not being a part of Starfleet. It very much looks like they came to Starfleet asking for help in undertaking their research project to chase rumours, something that many other organisations would have not have even had the patience to entertain. But Starfleet are aware of these whispers and rumours, the El-Aurien descriptions, strange occurrences in deep Romulan space, and potentially even the 200-year-old cyborg incident with the NX-01, agrees to grant them a vessel to investigate. After all, with much of this talk centred around Romulan space, Starfleet is not exactly at liberty to simply pop on over and take a look itself, and the Romulans likely would not share this intel either way. But with the Federation expanding towards the Beta Quadrant more every year, of course they are gradually going to start taking these rumours more seriously. It's just that, with no actual sightings, they're unwilling to assign specific missions to chasing such flimsy leads. By the time they are looking into it seriously, the Borg are also getting curious about the Federation and begin taking colonies away to study through assimilation. Q basically rolls his eyes at the UFP's slowness, and then shows up and drops the Enterprise right in front of the Borg and says, "There." So basically, Starfleet owes Q one for the warning. Technically, Starfleet knew of the Borg since 2153, and the Federation knew since its founding. But there was no proof, and sightings and rumours were too sporadic over such a long time that they were unlikely to even be connected, let alone certainties. By the time the leads were more solid, well, the Borg were making their move, and actual confirmation was inevitable. What do you think? Does this all sound plausible to you? If you have other theories, let me know below. But until the next one, I've been Rick. Thanks again, and goodbye.